She doesn't walk into the room demanding attention, but somehow all eyes find her. She's not the loudest, the youngest, or the prettiest, yet there's something about her that stays with you long after she's gone. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely." This isn't about beauty. This isn't about perfection. This is about depth. Here's the truth about what makes a woman absolutely unforgettable and why it has nothing to do with what you see in the mirror. Picture this. You're at a gathering, maybe a work event, maybe a friend's party. Your eyes scan the room, automatically cataloging faces, measuring beauty by the standards society has drilled into your head. And then she walks in. She's not the woman who turns heads because of her perfect features. She's not wearing the tightest dress or the most expensive jewelry. Hell, she might even be what some would call ordinary at first glance. But when she speaks, something happens. Her voice carries weight. Not volume, weight. Every word seems carefully chosen, not because she's overthinking, but because she knows the power of silence and the power of breaking it. Her eyes don't dart around seeking approval. They rest calmly on whoever she's speaking with, as if that person in that moment is the only one who matters in the entire room. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon perfectly. He wrote, "Your perception becomes clear only when you can look into your soul." This woman, she's looked. And what she found there wasn't fear or insecurity or the desperate need to be validated by strangers. She found herself. The real self. The integrated self. And that changes everything. You know what's fascinating? Studies in psychology show that we form impressions of people within the first 7 seconds of meeting them. 7 seconds. That's barely enough time to say hello, let alone truly see someone. But this woman, she breaks that rule. Because the impression she makes isn't immediate, it's cumulative. It builds with every interaction, every conversation, every moment of presence she offers. She's proof that charisma isn't about being the most beautiful person in the room. It's about being the most authentic, the most present, the most real. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The most irresistible woman isn't trying to be irresistible at all. She's not performing femininity. She's not following some script she learned from magazines or movies or social media influencers. She's not even thinking about whether she's attractive to others. She's simply present. Fully, completely present with herself and with whoever happens to be in her orbit. Jung called this integration. It's what happens when you stop fighting the different parts of yourself and start embracing them. When you accept your light and your shadow, your strength and your vulnerability, your wisdom and your foolishness. Most people are walking around fragmented. They show one face to their family, another to their friends, another to their coworkers. They're constantly adjusting their personality based on who they think others want them to be. But not her. She's the same person whether she's alone in her apartment on a Tuesday night or at a high-stakes business meeting on a Friday afternoon. She's consistent, integrated, whole. And wholeness is magnetic. Think about it. When was the last time you met someone who seemed completely comfortable in their own skin? Someone who wasn't trying to impress you or convince you of anything. Someone who was just themselves? Rare, right? Almost shockingly rare. That's because most of us are taught from childhood to be performers rather than people. We learn to smile when we're sad, to be agreeable when we disagree, to make ourselves smaller to make others comfortable. But this woman, she unlearned all of that. She doesn't shrink herself to fit into spaces that are too small for her soul. She doesn't dim her light to avoid making others feel insecure. She doesn't apologize for taking up space or having opinions or being fully human. And here's the thing that blows people's minds. Her confidence isn't loud or boastful or attention-seeking. It's quiet, steady, unshakable. She knows who she is, she likes who she is, and she's not asking for your permission to exist as herself. Here's where it gets really interesting. The thing that makes her most attractive is that she doesn't need you to find her attractive. I know. That sounds contradictory. But stay with me. Psychology has a term for this, secure attachment energy. It's the energy of someone who's learned to meet their own emotional needs, who doesn't require constant validation or reassurance from others to feel okay about themselves. Most people are walking around with what psychologists call anxious attachment. They need constant proof that they're loved, wanted, valued. They text multiple times when they don't get an immediate response. They change their plans to accommodate others even when it compromises their own well-being. They say yes when they mean no and sorry when they've done nothing wrong. But not her. She can be deeply connected to people without being dependent on them. She can love fully without losing herself. She can care without clinging. Carl Jung wrote about this phenomenon. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the transformation should not mean the destruction of either. She understands this intuitively. She knows that real love, real connection, real intimacy happens between two whole people, not two half people trying to complete each other. So she doesn't chase. She doesn't pursue. She doesn't try to convince anyone of her worth. Instead, she lives her life fully, passionately, authentically, and invites others to join her if they choose. The paradox is incredible. The less she needs you, the more you want to be needed by her. The less she chases, the more attractive she becomes. The more complete she is on her own, the more you want to be part of her completeness. It's like she's created this gravitational field around herself, not through desperation or manipulation, but through the simple act of being genuinely, unapologetically herself. Now here's something that separates her from almost everyone else. She knows how to say no. And she doesn't feel guilty about it. Think about that for a moment. When was the last time you said no to something without immediately following it up with an explanation, an apology, or a compromise that left you feeling resentful? She doesn't do that. When she can't attend your event, she says, "I won't be able to make it, but I hope you have a wonderful time." Period. No elaborate excuse about why she can't come. No guilt-laden apology about being a terrible friend. No promise to make it up to you somehow. Just a clear, kind, honest no. And somehow no one gets offended. No one feels rejected. Because her boundaries aren't walls built from anger or fear, they're clear lines drawn from self-respect and mutual respect. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, separate from the expectations and projections of others. Most people never complete this journey. They spend their entire lives being who they think others want them to be, saying yes to things they don't want to do, agreeing with opinions they don't share, molding themselves into shapes that feel foreign and uncomfortable. But she individuated. She separated her sense of self from other people's needs and wants and expectations. This doesn't make her selfish. If anything, it makes her more generous. Because when she says yes, she means it completely. When she chooses to spend time with you, she's fully present. When she offers help, it comes from genuine desire, not obligation. Her boundaries aren't about keeping people out, they're about honoring what's authentic for her so she can show up as her best self for the people and experiences she chooses to prioritize. And there's something deeply attractive about someone who knows their own mind, who trusts their own judgment, who doesn't need external validation to make decisions about their own life. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think being attractive means being perfect, polished, always positive, always put together. But she knows better. She's not afraid of her darkness. She doesn't hide her struggles, her failures, her moments of doubt or sadness or anger. She doesn't pretend to have it all figured out. Carl Jung had a revolutionary insight about this. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." She's made her darkness conscious. She's looked at her fears, her insecurities, her past mistakes, her character flaws. And instead of hiding them or being ashamed of them, she's integrated them into her understanding of herself. This doesn't mean she's comfortable being cruel or destructive. It means she's comfortable being human. When she's sad, she lets herself feel sad. When she's angry, she acknowledges the anger and deals with it constructively. When she makes a mistake, she owns it, learns from it, and moves forward without torturing herself with guilt and shame. Most people are terrified of their own darkness. They spend enormous amounts of energy pretending they don't have negative emotions, that they never mess up, that they're always fine, always strong, always in control. But this pretense is exhausting and ultimately hollow. She, on the other hand, has what Jung called the courage to be disliked. She's willing to be seen as flawed, complex, multidimensional. She's willing to be human rather than perfect. And paradoxically, this makes her more beautiful, not less. Because there's something deeply moving about someone who can be vulnerable without being victim, honest without being harsh, real without being destructive. Her scars aren't hidden, they're integrated into the story of who she is. And that story is infinitely more interesting than any fairy tale about perfection. While most people fear being alone, she's learned to treasure it. She doesn't use solitude as punishment or see it as evidence that she's unlovable or unwanted. She uses it as medicine, as fuel, as a sacred space where she can reconnect with herself. She has rituals for her alone time. Maybe she takes long walks without her phone. Maybe she journals by candlelight. Maybe she paints or reads poetry or simply sits in silence, listening to her own thoughts without judgment. Jung understood the transformative power of solitude. He wrote, "Solitude is where one discovers one's soul." She's discovered hers. And because she's comfortable with her own company, she never enters relationships from a place of desperation or loneliness. Think about the difference this makes. Most people get into relationships because they can't stand being alone. They'd rather be with the wrong person than be by themselves. They use other people as distractions from their own inner world. But she enters relationships as a choice, not a necessity. She's with people because they add value to her already fulfilling life, not because they fill some desperate void within her. This changes the entire dynamic. She's not clinging or needy or anxious about abandonment. She's not constantly seeking reassurance or trying to make herself indispensable to avoid being left. She's secure in her own company, which makes her infinitely more attractive as a companion to others. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who genuinely enjoys their own presence. It suggests depth, self-awareness, inner richness. It suggests that if you're lucky enough to be invited into their world, you're going to discover something valuable there. This might be the most radical thing about her. She loves without attachment. Now, this doesn't mean she loves without commitment or depth or intensity. It means she loves without the desperate need to possess, control, or consume the object of her love. She doesn't love to be loved back. She loves because love is her natural state, her way of being in the world. She doesn't get jealous because she doesn't see other people as property to be owned. She doesn't try to control her partner's behavior because she trusts that if someone wants to be with her, they'll choose to be with her, and if they don't, no amount of manipulation or surveillance will change that. This kind of love is incredibly rare. Most people love conditionally, transactionally. I'll love you if you love me back. I'll love you as long as you don't hurt me. I'll love you provided you meet my needs and expectations. But her love is more like sunlight. It shines because that's its nature, not because it expects something in return. And just like sunlight, this kind of love is life-giving. People bloom in her presence because they feel genuinely accepted, not judged or evaluated or held to impossible standards. She doesn't try to change people. She doesn't date potential. She doesn't love people for who they could become if only they would listen to her advice. She loves them as they are, right now, in this moment, or she doesn't love them at all. This creates incredible freedom in her relationships. People can be themselves around her without fear of rejection or criticism. They can share their struggles without being fixed. They can express their dreams without being told they're unrealistic. And in that freedom, something beautiful happens. People naturally want to become their best selves, not because she's demanding it, but because her acceptance creates the safety they need to grow. Here's what really sets her apart. She knows when to leave. Not in anger. Not in drama. Not with slammed doors and burned bridges. She just goes. When a relationship stops serving both people involved. When a job no longer aligns with her values. When a friendship becomes toxic or one-sided. When any situation begins to drain more energy than it provides. She has this incredible ability to recognize when something has run its course, and she honors that recognition instead of fighting it. Most people stay too long in situations that aren't working. They stay in bad relationships because they're afraid of being alone. They stay in unfulfilling jobs because they're afraid of change. They maintain toxic friendships because they're afraid of confrontation. But she's not driven by these fears. She understands what Jung meant when he said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. She knows her own patterns, her own triggers, her own tendency to stay in situations out of guilt or fear or hope that things will magically improve without any real change. And because she knows these things about herself, she can recognize when she's falling into old patterns and choose differently. When she leaves, it's not punishment. It's not revenge. It's not meant to hurt or teach anyone a lesson. It's simply recognition that this particular chapter has ended and she has the wisdom and courage to turn the page. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who values themselves enough to walk away from situations that diminish them. It suggests strength, self-respect, and the kind of inner compass that so many people lack. Every scar tells a story. But most people try to hide their scars, pretend they don't exist, or let them become sources of shame and self-hatred. Not her. She's alchemized her pain into wisdom, her failures into strength, her losses into compassion. She doesn't wear her wounds like badges of honor, demanding sympathy or special treatment because of what she's endured. But she doesn't hide them either, pretending she's somehow escaped the human experience of suffering. Instead, she's integrated her experiences, all of them, into a deeper understanding of herself and the world. That betrayal that could have made her bitter? It taught her the importance of trusting her intuition. That failure that could have crushed her confidence? It showed her that she's stronger than she thought. That loss that could have closed her heart? It opened her to deeper compassion for others who are grieving. Carl Jung believed that our wounds are often our greatest sources of wisdom. He wrote, "The wounded healer is the archetype of the therapist, the one who can heal others because they have been healed themselves." She embodies this archetype, not because she positions herself as someone's savior or therapist, but because her healing journey has given her a depth of understanding that naturally creates space for others to heal as well. When someone shares their struggles with her, she doesn't immediately try to fix them or offer advice or compare their pain to her own. She simply holds space for their experience, drawing on her own journey through darkness to light. This depth, this hard-earned wisdom, this transformation of wounds into gifts, it's incredibly attractive. Not in a surface-level way, but in a soul-deep way that goes far beyond physical appearance or social status. She's living proof that our greatest struggles can become our greatest strengths, and that beauty isn't about avoiding pain, it's about how gracefully we transform it. In a world full of people playing roles, she's simply being herself. She's not performing femininity according to some script she learned from magazines or movies. She's not trying to be the cool girl, or the mother figure, or the perfect partner, or any other archetype that might win approval. She's just her. Complex, contradictory, multifaceted, real. Sometimes she's soft and nurturing. Sometimes she's fierce and uncompromising. Sometimes she's playful and silly. Sometimes she's serious and contemplative. She doesn't try to be consistent in her persona because she understands that consistency in personality is actually a limitation, not a strength. Real people are complex. Real people contain multitudes. Most people are so afraid of being disliked or misunderstood that they create these simplified, sanitized versions of themselves to present to the world. They become caricatures of human beings rather than actual human beings. But she's willing to be misunderstood. She's willing to be disliked by people who don't appreciate her complexity. She's willing to be seen as difficult or complicated or too much by people who prefer their relationships simple and surface level. Because she knows that the people worth knowing, they'll love her complexity. They'll be fascinated by her contradictions. They'll be drawn to her depth. And the people who don't, well, those aren't her people anyway. This authenticity is magnetic because it's so rare. In a world of carefully curated social media personas and people-pleasing performances, someone who's genuinely, unapologetically themselves stands out like a lighthouse in the fog. Here's something that completely flips the script on traditional relationship dynamics. She's not waiting to be chosen. She's doing the choosing. She doesn't sit around hoping someone will notice her, want her, pick her out of a crowd of options. She's actively evaluating whether the people in her life deserve access to her time, energy, and heart. This isn't arrogance. It's self-respect. She understands that her presence is a gift, not a consolation prize. Her love is valuable, not desperate. Her attention is earned, not automatically granted. When someone wants to be part of her life, they have to bring something to the table. Not money or status or conventional attractiveness, but character, integrity, emotional maturity, the ability to match her depth and authenticity with their own. She has standards and she doesn't apologize for them. Most people, especially women, are taught to be grateful for any attention they receive, to lower their standards to avoid being alone, to compromise their values to maintain relationships. But she learned something different. She learned that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who doesn't appreciate her worth. That it's better to have high standards and a smaller circle than low standards and a lot of superficial connections. When she does choose someone, whether as a friend, a partner, or even just someone she wants to spend time with, that choice means something. It's not random or desperate or based on convenience. It's a recognition of something valuable in that person that resonates with something valuable in herself. And because her choice is so intentional, so considered, so rare, it means everything to the people who receive it. So why is she unforgettable? Why does she linger in your thoughts long after she's gone? Why do you find yourself comparing other people to her? It's not because she's perfect. It's because she's real. In a world full of people wearing masks, she shows her face. In a world full of people performing personas, she reveals her soul. In a world full of people seeking external validation, she validates herself. She holds up a mirror to everyone she meets. Not intentionally, not manipulatively, but simply by being so authentically herself that she makes everyone else aware of how much they're pretending. When you're with her, you remember what it feels like to be genuine. You remember parts of yourself you'd forgotten or buried or denied. You remember that you, too, are complex and deep and worthy of love exactly as you are. But she also challenges you. Her authenticity forces you to confront your own masks. Her boundaries make you examine your own lack of boundaries. Her self-respect highlights your own self-abandonment. She's simultaneously the most accepting person you'll ever meet, and the one who will most clearly show you where you're not accepting yourself. Carl Jung said it perfectly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. She's claimed that privilege. She's become who she truly is, without apology or compromise or the desperate need for external approval. And in doing so, she becomes a living reminder of what's possible for all of us. That's why she's unforgettable. Not because she's the most beautiful or the most successful or the most anything according to external measures, but because she's the most herself, the most real, the most integrated, the most whole. And in a world full of fragments and performances and people pretending to be someone they're not, wholeness is the rarest and most attractive quality of all. She doesn't just walk through life, she inhabits it, fully, completely, authentically. And once you've seen what that looks like, you can never unsee it. Once you've experienced that level of authenticity, everything else feels like an imitation. Once you've been in the presence of someone who's truly, completely themselves, you understand what Jung meant about the privilege of becoming who you truly are. And maybe, just maybe, you start wondering what it would feel like to claim that privilege for yourself. The woman I've described isn't mythical. She's not superhuman. She's not perfect. She's simply someone who decided that being herself was more important than being liked by everyone. That her own approval mattered more than anyone else's. That authenticity was worth more than acceptance. And here's the beautiful truth. Everything I've described about her, it's available to you too. The integration, the boundaries, the self-respect, the ability to be alone, the courage to walk away, the transformation of wounds into wisdom. These aren't rare gifts bestowed on a chosen few. They're skills that can be developed, practices that can be cultivated, choices that can be made. The question isn't whether you're capable of becoming this irresistible in the deepest sense of the word. The question is whether you're willing to do the work of becoming who you truly are. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The privilege is available. The invitation is extended. The only question left is, will you accept it?